Does the conjugate method work for raw lifters? Now, many people will tell you on the internet that the conjugate method or the Westside method doesn't work for raw powerlifting or any lifting in general. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about the conjugate method, what it is and how to use it for raw lifting. I use the conjugate method for all of my competition prep as a raw lifter, and as you will see, every time I've competed my total has increased. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Specific Personal Training. I'm Dan, and this is where I help people find alignment and success in health and fitness. Now, if you want to stay up to date with all the latest content from this channel, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications. So before we get deep into it, I feel like I should just give you a quick little bit of background. So Westside Barbell was a gym that was formed in the 80s by Louis Simmons, who is just the man for strength coaching. He came up with the Westside method through looking through a lot of the old training systems that the Eastern European Olympic coaches used. So he basically got a combination of lots of stuff that they were doing and put it in together to make this conjugate style of training. So what is the Westside method or conjugate system? Well, it's a system that's based around strengthening the weak points of your particular sport. How it works is you have a two-way split. You have 2 max effort days, 1 for upper, 1 for lower, and then you have 2 dynamic effort days, 1 for upper, 1 for lower. How it would work for powerlifting is you would go in and you would do that max effort on your bench press, your squat, or your deadlift, or any variation on where your weak point is. And then how it would work for Olympic lifting is you would do it, a max effort with your snatch or your clean and jerk or any breakdown of that. And for the CrossFit, you would do a WOD. If you're in an off season, not prepping for a competition, you could use one of the Olympic lifts or a squat or a deadlift, but normally you would use a WOD as your measuring stick. Now, a lot of people say you're not really training the Westside method if you are a raw lifter, and I kind of agree with that, because the Westside method was built around geared lifting, equipped lifting. It was built around bench shirts and squat briefs, and a lot of the stuff that they do, especially for the max efforts, they will do in squat briefs or suits and deadlift suits, and they use a lot of gear like bands and chains and everything. So unless you have all of that, then I agree you're not really using the Westside method, you're using more the conjugate method, and that is where the slight difference comes between the two of them. If you're using the conjugate method, you can use bands and chains and speciality bars, and as you'll see, it's something that I do use a lot. And I like to use that because it brings something different and unique to my training, and it helps me focus on those weak points that I need to bring up. Now, if you're training in a commercial gym, you won't have all of these speciality bars and bands and chains. So you have to get quite inventive with the variations that you will do for your max effort, because you don't always want to go in and just do squat, bench and deadlift. You want to do exercises that strengthen those weak areas. Like if you're weak at the lockout of a deadlift, you'll do lots of rack pulls. If you're weak in the bottom of a squat, you might want to do pause squats. So a couple of upper body variations that you could use in training to mix things up and to keep constantly evolving. You could use pause benches, you could use benches off pins, you could even use shoulder presses or kettlebell presses. For the lower body, again, to keep things mixed up, you could do deficit deadlifts, you could do pause squats, you could probably do box squats if your gym has something that you can sit on. You could do rack pulls, high bar squats, you could do low bar squats, you could do super wide stance, you could do close stance squats. There are still a ton of different variations that you could use with this system, even in a commercial gym. A lot of the training in my early days have been done in commercial gyms, so that just gives you an idea of how you can make it work for yourself even if you are training in a commercial gym. So the dynamic effort focuses on speed strength. The idea is the quicker you can move weight, the more weight you can move. Force equals mass times acceleration. So the way how it works is it's built on a particular set and rep scheme. So for the squat, you'll do 10 to 12 sets of 2 reps. For the deadlift, you'll do 8 to 10 sets of 1 rep, and for the bench press, you will do 9 sets of 3 reps. And the whole premises behind this is doing 2 reps at those percentages will be the same amount of time under the bar as it would do to do a max effort of that particular lift. So, you know, with the time that it takes you to do 3 speed benches at 50% is the same amount of time it would take you to do 1 maximal effort bench press. So the percentages for the Westside method are between 50 to 60 or 65%. For raw lifters though, you would use between 65 to 75%. The reason for this is because, as I mentioned earlier, the Westside method is used for equipped lifting a lot. So when they do their max efforts, they will be in briefs and bench shirts a lot of the time, but they'll do the dynamic effort raw. So because of that, their percentages will be a little bit lower, because obviously you can't handle in equipment what you can do raw. So as a raw lifter, your percentages would be a little bit higher, especially if you're not using bands and chains or any kind of accommodating resistance. The idea behind the maximal effort is to strengthen your nervous system and strengthen, you know, your maximal strength in those weak areas. And then the dynamic effort is to increase your speed strength to get you to lift sub-maximal weights even faster. And how did Louis come up with this set and rep scheme? Well, it all fits into Premlin's chart. So Premlin chart was an Olympic strength coach, Olympic weightlifting coach. So as you can see here, he has 55 to 65%. You want to be doing between 3 to 6 reps per set, with a total amount of reps overall being between 18 to 30 and the optimal number being 24. And to be fair, Premlin's chart I think is the basis of what a lot of power lifters and weightlifters do use when it comes to designing their programs, whether it's percentage based program or whether it is something like the conjugate style. So then the way how it's laid out is that once you've done the dynamic or the maximal effort work for that day, depending on which one it is, you'll then go into the repetition method. And really what the repetition method is it's bodybuilding. The reason why I say it's bodybuilding essentially is because, well, one, you are building the body, and two, you'll be using those rep ranges as well. You know, you'll be using between 6 to 12 reps. The whole point of it is to build muscle and strengthen areas. Again, you particularly focusing on what might be the weaker area. So, you know, doing the lower body, you will do quads, you'll do hamstrings, you'll do glutes, and maybe with a little bit more focus on whichever is the weaker muscle. So maybe if my quads are the weaker muscle, you know, I'll put in a few more extra sets. You know, for the lower body, you have hamstring curls, leg pressers, you have all the different squat variations, all the different deadlift variations, good mornings, and the different variations that you can do with those as well. And same with the upper body, you need to focus on growing the whole of the upper body. So you'll use things like bench press variations, you do lots of tricep works, and then you'll focus on the back as well, doing lat pull downs, all different row variations, and then your shoulders with shoulder pressers, lateral raises, and things like that. So before we go into what I would change about conjugate for raw lifters, if this is something that you're looking at trying, which I assume that you are because you're here watching this video, then simply type a yes in the comments below. And if you want to see highlights of how I use the conjugate method for my raw lifting, then just click on this link in the corner here. So what would I change about conjugate for raw lifters? Well, let's start off with the max effort. I'd stick between a 3 or 2 rep max scheme. I'd certainly only do 1 rep max if I am 100% sure that I can get it. And the reason for this is that you don't want to miss a weight. If you miss a weight, you're going to end up causing yourself an injury, or certainly running the risk of it. This is an issue that I personally have had. I would always be headstrong on getting a PR in that lift, and I would cause myself an injury. And what was even worse is that half the time I would get a PR, but then I'd want to put an extra 2 kilos on, I want to put an extra 5 kilos on, and I would basically just keep going until I failed. And that has caused me to be quite banged up over the years. So what I would do now is I do a 2 rep max. You do the first one, and then you're not 100% sure that you're going to get the second one. If it looks a little bit shaky, then you can just re-rack the bar. Something especially good to do if you are not very in tune with your body, or maybe if you're just a little bit amped up and you're always convinced that you can do things, stick with the 2 rep max. It prevents you from failing. With the dynamic effort, I would use the percentages that I mentioned above, being from 65 to 75%, and I wouldn't use the bands and chains as much. Why would I not use the bands and chains as much? Well, it's because the accommodating resistance really does work more for equipped lifters, because it's lighter in the bottom, heavier in the top, which is how it works with equipped lifting. The weights will be lighter in the bottom of the squat because the squat suit helps push you out of the bottom, and then it's heavy in the top, which is where you need to do most of the lifting. When you're a raw lifter, the weight feels the same all the way down and up. It doesn't get lighter in the bottom and heavier in the top. The weight stays at the same heaviness all the way throughout the lift. Another thing I do is I would use the main movement for assistance exercises. It's important with any lifting that you do keep practicing what you need in the competition. There's no point doing 12 weeks of leg presses and then hardly doing any squats, because you're not going to be leg pressing in a competition. You need to be squatting. So keep practicing what you're doing, and if you're an Olympic lifter, you need to put all of those lifts together. It's all right doing hanging snatches, power cleans and things like that, but you need to be able to get your system used to doing the whole exercise as one movement. So certainly program some of those kind of things in. And the last thing that I would change, although it's probably more just general advice, as it is something that they do a lot in the Westside method too, is that getting closer to a meet is I would back off the max effort lifts. One thing that you don't want to be doing is maxing out a week before competition. I've known some people do this, and it really doesn't turn out well for them a lot of the time when it comes to putting it on the platform. What I actually do is 4 weeks before a competition, I start working in on my openers. So I'll take the numbers from my last max effort squat or deadlift. I'll get about 90% of that, or certainly what I feel comfortable with. I decide that that's going to be my opener, and then I will work for 3 weeks on that with varying rep and set scheme. And then the last week I always have off for complete rest and recuperation to make sure that come platform day that I'm ready to go. Now, the conjugate method fits all sports and styles. It's important to understand this because there are no set parameters on exercises. You can tailor it to your specific sport. One thing that I do, and I certainly recommend you guys to do, is try a different bunch of things. Speak to a bunch of different coaches, speak to a bunch of different lifters who are stronger than you for advice, and see what works for yourself personally. No matter what program you're doing or where you take your advice from, whether it's from a conjugate or Westside style of program, whether it's 5-3-1, the cube method, a juggernaut style system, Shenko system. It's all about building a program that works for you. And to be fair, this is one of the reasons why I do like the conjugate method so much, because it allows me to build a program which is specific for me. I can change the exercises and some of the parameters as I need to. But yeah, that's my bottom line at the end of the day. No matter what program you're looking at, build one that works for you and a style that you like and that you can do. So thanks everyone for watching this video, and I hope it has given you some more insight into the conjugate for raw lifters. If you have any questions, then let's talk about it in the comments below. Let me know if you liked or disliked this video by mashing that thumb button. In the description section is my other social media links, so by all means head over there and give me a follow on there too. And if you haven't already, click the subscribe button and turn on the notifications to get all the latest content from us. But if you want to see how I use the conjugate method for raw lifting, then let's just head over to this video right now.